soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force. You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. You will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory.
The invasion of Normandy, also known as D-Day or Operation Overlord, took place on June 6, 1944 in Normandy, France. It was one of many battles of World War II. The Allies were made up of the Americans, British, French, Canadians, Norwegians, Polish, Soviets, Chinese, and many more. They were against the Axis, who were taking over countries and were trying to rule the world. They were made up of the Germans, Japanese, Italians, Romanians, and more. The invasion was a large turning point in world history and changed the outcome of World War II. The Russians needed help in the east side of the world, holding back the forces of the Nazi or German army. The Allies knew they needed a plan, and they needed it soon because the Germans were winning and have took over many countries. After D-Day, it was a turning point that the Axis started losing once the Allies had soldiers, vehicles, and military equipment in Europe, pushing the Nazi and other Axis countries back into their own territory. In 1943, 1 year prior to D-Day, the leader of America, Franklin Roosevelt, the leader of England, Winston Churchill, and the leader of Russia, or the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, met together to talk about a new invasion force into Europe. The three leaders of the nations chose General Dwight D. Eisenhower as the supreme Allied commander of the invasion. They also chose General Bernard Montgomery to be in charge of the landing operations. In March of 1943, Bernard Montgomery and Dwight D. Eisenhower made the plans for the invasion of Normandy. In late 1943, American and Canadian troops go to England to prepare and train for D-Day. Training for D-Day was 7 days a week, every day. Some soldiers had to wake up in the morning and just for warm-up run 10 miles. While the soldiers were training in England, the civilians in England were suffering due to the German bombing raids that came almost every night. Here's Janet Peters, who lived in England during the times of these bombing raids.
So one morning, a 500-ton bomb dropped in front of our house and another one in the back. And we were in the center. Everything fell down in the front and everything fell down in the back. And we were kind of closed for a while, but we did get out. And the whole street was, as you see, there's some pictures available. It was a disaster. But luckily, we had tried, there was a shelter on the road. They built shelters everywhere. And because every single night you got up, went to the shelter because the sirens went, you get later on, you get lazy. Oh, let's not go tonight, let's take a chance, you know. And this was the one night we decided not to go. And the siren went, and then the emergency siren went, and my father said, better go to the shelter. And we started out towards the front of the house, and that's when we didn't get there. Everything caved in. So we had a little warning on that. We just threw ourselves under the table, and I think my brother went in the closet, and we were all right, thank God. And another day, one of our boys was a fighter pilot. He left the Ed and he became a fighter pilot. And he was training. He used to come and buzz the office, you know, fly around, flap his wings, and we'd all run to the window and say, there's Pete, hi Pete. So one day we heard this fighter plane coming in. We all ran to the window, say, hi Pete. And it wasn't. It was a German fighter, and suddenly machine gun fire started. So we all dove back onto this.
This is the city that she lived in. Some of these pictures were actually taken on the street that she lived on. The England government asked people that lived in England to send postcards or pictures of the Normandy coastline. That way they could put it all together to make a large map for the invasion of Normandy, since they did not know what it looked like. They also did not know if the sand on Normandy beaches could hold up tanks and military equipment. So they sent out a submarine with 2 divers, and they went ashore and analyzed it at night so that the Germans could not see them. They found out that the sand was suitable for tanks and military equipment. A successful general named George Patton and his men tried to trick the Nazi army by pretending the invasion would be in Calais, France, instead of Normandy, France. Patton and his army did this by positioning fake blow-up tanks towards Calais. The Germans had more men and equipment in Calais due to the trick that the general played on them. On May 8, 1944, Eisenhower chose June 5th as the attack date. But on June 4th, there was horrible weather conditions with thunderstorm rain, so Eisenhower moves the date of the invasion to June 6th instead. At 11 a.m., the group of 25,000 soldiers, which 14,000 were volunteers, got ready to jump into Normandy. They were in the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. Only 4 German planes were in the sky that day due to the others were being repaired that week. But unfortunately, due to the German anti-aircraft fire, a lot of the planes went off course and dropped the men of the airborne teams into the swamp, where many of them drowned due to their backpacks were 100 to 175 pounds. At 3 a.m., the soldiers got into the landing crafts to go on their trip across the English Channel to the beaches of Normandy. 5 a.m., the bomber planes dropped 5 tons of bombs all over France. But the problem was they waited 3 seconds too long, which made them drop it on just fields of grass. This is Al Koying, who was in one of these planes on D-Day.
Well, I'll tell you, those are before. You could see the Thames River. It was just loaded with boats on top. I knew it was coming, they didn't tell you nothing. And then they said, yeah, it's going to be the next day or so. It was a day to see it, too, I tell you. I never saw so many airplanes up there. And the transports, they took the troops in. Some of them never even had engines. They just put them up in the air and then they went. Wherever they landed, it was someday. I'm just glad I'm back.
This was Al Koying and his B-17 bombing team that flew over Normandy. On the beaches in Normandy, the American troops took Utah, Pointe du Hoc, and Omaha, while the British took Golden Sword and the Canadians took Juno. Pointe du Hoc was important because they had 3 large turrets at the top which could fire at Omaha or Utah beaches, which could lead the mission to a failure. But when they got up there, the turrets were nothing but telephone poles pretending to be the cannons. The Americans landed on Utah at 6:30 a.m. and with 23,000 men, but a lot of the Germans surrendered, which made it easier for the soldiers. Golden Sword were both stormed at 7:30 a.m. Gold had 25,000 soldiers that stormed it, and 29,000 stormed Sword. There were 400 British deaths on Gold and 630 deaths on Sword. The Canadians stormed Juno at 8 o'clock a.m. They had 340 deaths. That is a lot for a small force that they had on Juno Beach. Omaha was the hardest and most well-defended of all the beaches. 32,000 American soldiers stormed Omaha Beach. In the first 10 minutes, every sergeant or officer was wounded or killed. There was 1,500 deaths and 1,500 wounded. One of the problems with Omaha Beach was the landing craft itself. When the front opened, the Germans would fire through the front and hit the first couple people, and the people in the back would jump over the sides to try to avoid being hit. But once again, due to their heavy backpacks, many of them drowned. If they made it off the water, they would have to get to the 8-foot wall where they could take cover from German fire. Eventually, the Allies took control of Normandy and the battle was won. Unfortunately, there was many casualties.
With the boy that was on the beaches at D-Day, but unfortunately, he was killed on D-Day.
This was one of thousands of deaths in Normandy, but if it wasn't for these brave men and women that went through this dangerous and life-threatening mission, we may not have gotten the Jewish out of the concentration camps in Germany or won World War II. This was a massive turning point for World War II and the world. This is D-Day, the invasion of Normandy.